I hope you all had interesting, engaging, mindful couple of hours since we saw each other last. And what we're going to have now in the following session for an hour and a half, I'll talk to start with, and then we'll do a little bit of meditation together on related to what I'm going to talk about. And then we're going to do a ritual, which is quite unusual. Often, I don't know, I often associate ritual with the evening, the ascending of the darkness, and having rituals then. But there is something quite beautiful to do rituals. Well, even in the morning sometimes. Sometimes we do morning pujas, or, like now running into the noon. It just sets a particular feel for our practice, and I'll say a little bit more about that and how it fits just before we do that. So yeah, I want to kind of build up on the little introduction that Ratnadeva provided us with yesterday night. And in a way, he gave us an overview of the territory. Yesterday, he was using quite heroic and almost, even military images, actually, when he was talking about the quest and us getting absorbed and getting closer to reality. And I don't know what you like, whether that kind of imagery works for you, but I get quite excited by missions, and I don't know whether you know those film scenes where you've got a team in a room and there is a mission, the maps are on the tables, there is like the briefing taking place, there is a plan, you've got like the whole upbeat, forward-going music, everybody's getting up for it. So I'm really into that whole mission, and I'm kind of thinking like, what is our territory here? What territory are we working here? And really, our territory is the mind-heart. And in Buddhism, it is the mind-heart. And for me, it's interesting because I still think of the heart at the center and the mind sort of separately. I've got this dualistic way of thinking about things. But actually, when I say mind-heart, what comes for me is that connection. There is that connection of the mind, the heart, so it forms something connected, one whole thing. So the mind-heart is our territory, is that perception of through which we experience ourselves, we experience the world, and that's what we're exploring really. And our mission is increasing our ability to engage with an object of meditation. And why we're really doing that is because we want to penetrate or get closer, get an insight, so we can allow wisdom to arise. We can, something out of that absorption, something out of that close connection to objects, something can rise out of that. And that allows for us a shift of consciousness that makes us be in the world in a different way to what we might be right now. So there is this turning of our consciousness that I'm certainly after, and I wonder whether that sort of resonates for you as well. And for me, some of the images that come to mind is I'm more like with the mountain, so I can be like a majestic mountain in the world that can just be with whatever is in a really sort of stable way. Or I know one of Millie's favorite images is this tree that dances in the wind, so is firmly rooted in the earth, but kind of bends with the winds, with the ups and downs of life. So really, that's where we going with this. This is what we looking at, and we're looking at the process of how can we make this closer engagement with objects happen. And before I go into the various what we call the intensifiers, the ways of us getting closer, more intense in relation to particular objects in meditation, I just want to sort of mention my fascination or attractions to masters. You know, any form of a master. And what I mean by that is a person who embodies mastery. For me, when I meet people who are masters in something, it sort of brings about this awe or fascination. And I have a couple of Kung Fu masters in my life. So, you know, I meet 3 Kung Fu masters that I feel are quite regular in my life. But it doesn't have to be just Kung Fu masters, for example. It could be meditators. You know, for me, Paramananda would be someone who's got a particular mastery here. So you know, he embodies his practice of meditation, and it comes through when you meet the person, when you meet a master, it shines through, it radiates through. And it might not necessarily be a meditator, but it could be meditation teacher. So it could be somebody who embodies and is able to communicate that particular mastery. And it, you know, it's not only just related to necessarily meditation or sort of Buddhist world, but on our team we have, for example, Sahananda. And when he starts talking about his coding sort of group that he's part of, like the whole world lights up. You know, he really is engaged fully in that particular area of his interest, coding, and you know, he's a real master in that, and that really shines through. And I even thought, I spent quite a lot of time looking out of the window during lockdown, and our neighbours downstairs, they just put up home office, you know, nothing in the garden one day, and over a couple of weeks there is this hut where there is internet, you've got like you've got solar panels on the top of it. They're just masters of DIY. You know, you just see out of nothing this beautiful hut that I now can look out of the window every time I'm sitting by my desk. It's just beautiful. So with these masters and people embodying mastery, the question is, what gives rise to that mastery? You know, what enables those skills to develop to high levels so people can embody that mastery? And I'm just thinking, even for example, ice skaters or like the Kung Fu masters, when they move, their whole movement embodies that particular craft that they've decided to do that. And really how that develops is by doing things. You know, we have to do the thing that we want to master. So there is a certain element of repetition, which is incredibly important. And one of the Kung Fu master recently was talking about you know, how much should we practice every day, and he was saying, well, look, if you practice half an hour, and then you've got like 23.5 hours in the day doing something that is totally and utterly unrelated to your craft, it's not going to make much of a difference. So he was like looking at, you know, when you're looking at 24 hours, how do you actually divide that time? How much time is actually devoted to the practice, or devoted to the thing that you want to master, or the thing that you really, your heart is set on. And obviously we need to do the thing, and there is that repetition, but it's also a lot about avoiding forming bad habits. So it's not just like repeating things, you know, like sitting on the cushion. What you do on the cushion, let's say, makes also a difference, because you could be sitting and forming bad habits for your mind. You know, you could actually be sitting down and increasing, you know, hatred for yourself because of the way that you talk to yourself. Vilasini comes to mind when she said last night, when she said how she was talking really harshly to herself for ages, and how that shifted. So it's really important what we actually do, and reflecting and adjusting. And sometimes that involves certain rituals as well. You know, often it helps us to have rituals. It helps us to form, for example, a sacred place. I saw books when he entered as our sort of virtual shrine. He bowed to that space that he's practicing in. So that sometimes we form rituals that are also a big part of our practice, and moving towards that mastery. So if we need to practice, and if we need to do that quite a lot, you know, there is engagement with that over a period of time. If we want to engage with meditation, or if we want to engage with spiritual life more broadly, you know, what actually motivates us? What is that initial spark? What provides that fuel for our practice? And this is what I want to sort of touch on, is the first two intensifiers. So Ratnadeva last night said we're going to visit different guest houses. So the guest houses that we're going to visit in this session is emotional engagement and resolve. So I don't know if you're anything like me. I'm kind of, at the moment, still this fragmented, split self. Sometimes head tells me something to do, my heart tells me something else to do, will does this own thing. Then there are all these habits I'm sort of navigating and going through different actions. So there is a bit of you know, lack of integration, which means lots of energy gets dissipated. And, you know, small example of that is like last week, you know, every single morning my alarm went up at 5 a.m. And I know from experience, I know that when I get up at 5 a.m. and I do an hour practice of Kung Fu, and then before breakfast, I might have 2 meditations, I know what it feels like. I know what my day looks like after that. I even have that with my partner. We often during lockdown, we've been meeting for breakfast, which is quite unusual in our lives before, but now we spend breakfast together. And as soon as I enter the door into the kitchen, he knows whether I've done the morning practice. He knows whether I got up at 5, because he says there is something different when you're involved in that. So, and you know, sometimes, like, I don't give myself hard time. Ratnadeva was talking about our rucksacks, what is in our rucksacks, and we should bring everything on the journey. And my rucksack at the moment is full of losses and turbulence and upheavals. So I'm kind of like, you know, I'm bringing my rucksack with me. So when I don't get up at 5 a.m., and I didn't last week, for the entire week I didn't, it's, I see it in the context, but I also know that there is a big part of me that wants to do that, that is really convinced that that's the way forward. So really what is essential, what is needed here is this emotional engagement. We need emotional engagement. It's not enough to kind of decide in our heads that it's a good idea to do something, because if your heart, if your whole emotions are not behind that, it's very difficult to sort of have that, be with that. So the emotional engagement, Yeshe Gilson says, what is interest? He calls it interest. It is a desire to endow a desired thing with this or that particular attribute, and has the function of laying the foundation for making a start on assiduous striving. So it has the foundation of laying the foundation for making a start on assiduous striving. So if we actually want to completely, wholeheartedly strive for something, there's got to be that spark, there's got to be that engagement. And Ratnadeva was talking yesterday about effort and diligence and perseverance. It's not necessarily something cold. Don't know if any of you saw Free Solo, a film about a climber who's just incredibly devoted to climbing, climbs solo, did this massive feast of climbing El Capitan, which is incredibly hard climb to do with a rope, let alone not having a rope. So it's one of those, one wrong step and it's death guaranteed. So it's he's done that, and when he's talking in that film, he actually talks that he's really driven. There is something driven totally by discipline, and it's quite cold. He says about himself that inside of him there is this bottomless pit of self-loathing, and I find that incredibly sort of in some ways, when we are embarking on spiritual life, that will not do. It will not do if the heart is not there, because wisdom is compassion. Wisdom is something that is positive, that is kind. They're almost exchangeable. Compassion is exchangeable. And you've got that even with sort of army officials, or if you're interested, I'm totally into SAS. The program Who Dares Wins totally fascinates me. And I see myself as this kind of discipline, totally into overcoming whatever obstacles. But what's happening is that something is cut off. There is an overriding that is not brought on board. And you see then it comes out in different ways. You see that with people who are in armies, who are involved in conflicts. It's got often very big repercussions afterwards, because a big part of them was left out. The emotional part, the real engagements with emotions have been left out. So for meditation, we need this, we call it chanda. We need this chanda interest, this eagerness. Subhuti calls it emotional engagement. Yeah, so it's not just an interest, but it's the emotions are kind of evolved to be with an object of meditation. So it's when you kind of say to yourself and you feel it fully in your heart, let that be the object of my attention and not something else. So we want to be involved with an object of meditation, and we want to stay involved in it. And it could work in a negative way as well, in the opposite. You can cultivate what you could call like a negative chanda or negative engagement, and that is where there is distaste for contaminated object. I was speaking with my mum yesterday, and she said, "Why don't you sometimes have a glass of liquor or something?" We were talking about alcohol, and my whole body went like, ugh, why would I want to do that? And but it's not because I've developed in a way a distaste for feeling dizzy through having lots of alcohol in my bloodstream. It's just I don't like it. But it's not something that I'm depriving myself. It's just something that becomes a choice that I'm not interested. That's not what I want to do. Yeah. So you could have this renunciation, and it could be like, you're letting go of things, and that's also chanda. It's kind of that reverse chanda. So the art of meditation really is getting hooked up, getting chanda, getting that emotional interest, emotional engagement is really getting hooked up. And you need quite a bit of self-knowledge for that. And also setting up the sort of right conditions or circumstances. And even we were talking about, I think Damien yesterday mentioned preparing for the retreat, preparing his space. So you can prepare space so you can limit distractions where you are. So you can even surround yourself with friends who meditate. I'm really touched at the moment in West London. Every morning, Monday to Friday, there are about 15 people on a regular basis who come together and sit from 7 till 8. And it's, it's a bunch of people who just do that every day, and they support each other in turning up for that meditation, and in that way they're creating conditions for themselves for that. So a question for you is, where is chanda for you? Where is interest? Where does interest lie for you? What sparks you off when you're on the cushion, when you're in meditation? What creates that engagement? What can bring that about? And I just wanted to share with you an image. Let me just do that. And it's really, it's quite a famous kind of image from Buddhist sort of mythology, where the Buddha is out from the confines of his palace, and he comes across what we call the four sides. So here we've got the three sides. We've got an old person, an ill person, and a dead, a corpse. And if you think about it, in some ways, when Buddha saw this, and it made a massive difference to his life, having him leave his palace, very comfortable life. He wouldn't just leave that if that didn't penetrate into his heart, if that his emotions somehow didn't get stirred up. Often we just confronted with an idea of death, an idea of old age, or idea of illness. But actually, it's when it really touches us, that's when things get stirred up and propelled forward. So, in a way, that allows us to get to the second intensifiers. And once you've got emotional engagements, once the heart is engaged, it allows you to move towards resolve. Yeah, Chanda doesn't, it either falls off, you lose interest over time, or you might experience this constant wavering, constant undercutting, or it might lead to resolve. And it's got a cognitive aspect to it, and it's got an active aspect to it. So the cognitive aspect is that you are really convinced that the object that you're focusing on is the right object. You totally sort of, you're convinced by what you're doing that it will get you where you want to get. Because if there isn't that conviction, if there is doubt, it's very difficult to move into commitment from that place. Yeah? And doubt can often be habitual. You know, you sometimes meet people who are so overcome by doubt, really, really everything becomes or runs through the sort of lens of the doubt. And it's important that you work with that. You clarify what that doubt is. You know, in spiritual life, is it your doubt in the Buddha? Is it the doubt in the teachings? Is it the doubt in the Sangha or in the practices? So you can look into where that doubt is, where that lack of confidence is, and you might need to address that. Because if you address that, if the conviction is strong, so you've got that engagement, emotional engagement, you've got the conviction, then what follows from that is commitment. You act on that conviction. So in meditation, what you can ask yourself is, well, am I convinced? You know, am I actually committed here? So in some ways, you want to make up your mind, and then you want to do it. You want to apply yourself. You want to be able to act on that conviction. So these are the two intensifiers. And what I want us to do is let's meditate. And we'll have quite a short set. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just settle us into the body. And then we'll have probably about 10 minutes of sitting. And I want you, in those 10 minutes, I want you to, choose the practice that you might call your base practice. Something that you just go for. It's fairly, that's your practice to go to. So rather than, for me, I must say, Metta Bhavana wouldn't be my base practice, for example. That wouldn't be the first thing to do. I might decide to do and practice Metta Bhavana, but it might not be necessarily my base practice. But for some of you, that might be the base practice, okay? So decide what sort of practice you want to do for those 10 minutes. What do you want to focus on? If you're focusing on breath, what aspect of the breath you want to be focusing? And what I want you to be noticing in that meditation is, how much emotional engagement there is present. How much emotional engagement, how much are you up for it in your heart? Yeah. And what's really important when we're doing this is that if you, for example, find out, like me, sometimes, like, gosh, I'm not really up for following my breath right now. I'm really, that's not what I want to be. It's like, well, great, that's your starting point. Yeah. Because there is information for you that can help you. Okay, what would allow me to engage with this? What would that look like for me? Yeah. So you can Decide what that is. And then see whether it follows through into the conviction, or what you're doing. How much time do you actually spend? What practice you will do? It'll be interesting to see whether whether you immediately decide and you stick with your practice, or whether sometimes you start practice and end up different practice halfway through. I'm talking here sometimes about myself. So, yeah. So, and then seeing, how committed you remain through those 10 minutes. Yeah. So if you find a posture that will serve you, just noticing what's happening right now in your body. I want to feel the ground underneath you, not having an idea, but really focusing on the sensations, the sensations in your legs, sensations in your bottom. If you're lying down, it might be your back as well. So just having that letting go into the ground, into the earth, fully held, fully supported. And at the same time, you're in a sitting position, just letting the spine curve naturally, the head extending, poised. That spectrum of the earth and sky. You're lying down, that sort of elongation might feel slightly different. Feel the energy expanding horizontally. And just bring your attention to the center, the rib cage, and have a sense of the heart. And be aware of the heartbeat. Aware of your breathing. Your lungs expanding with each breath. And contracting. Okay. Just 10 minutes practice of your choice. Just noticing where your heart mind is. So just letting the meditation practice come to a close in your own way. Maybe there might be some reflections for you over the afternoon, what happened in those 10 minutes in terms of engagement, in terms of that resolve, you know, the conviction. How far was that conviction? How far the commitment? Were you able to stay with that? And whether you might even see, did it go somewhere further? Did it evolve into something different? We'll have groups in the afternoon, so there will be an opportunity to share with others. So another way of how we can really engage our heart is through ritual practice. And I don't want to talk too much because I want us to carry on that meditation, that those 10 minutes of sitting into our ritual next. But we'll do this sevenfold puja, and it has 7 stages. And this puja was adopted from a text called the Bodhicharyavatara, and it's like a guidelines if you want to be a bodhisattva, if you want to be a being that helps all other beings. It's basically manual how to get into that. And it was written by Shantideva. I have a picture of Shantideva, and if you can see that. So Shantideva, he was really eager. I mean, his emotional engagement was massive. He was he had a tremendous desire to awaken his heart mind. He had tremendous desire to be of service to others and see the world through kindly eyes and be of service. So this sevenfold puja comes really out of text. And sometimes when his desire was fluctuating a little bit, he would always talk himself back into how essential it is that his heart does awake. So sometimes the text is kind of him convincing as well of that desire. And the 7 stages in sevenfold puja, they're really this, they can allow for this emotional engagement where we can be wholehearted, where we can bring the whole of ourselves into it. We can have we can go through these different moods. So we've got stages where there is a worship and salutation, when we can get in touch with the Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, with the ideal. Quite lots of you have done a series on 5 wisdoms and would have encountered the 5 Buddhas. So it's that kind of getting into the relationship with those figures. And then it goes into this resolve to go for refuge. And once you make that resolve, there is a section where we chant refuges and precepts. So we kind of chant out what we're committing ourselves in terms of the qualities that we want to develop. And another sort of journey that it takes us through this sevenfold puja is when we make confessions. Often in meditation, what makes us unsettled is when we're thinking about what we should have done, wish we had done, things that were different. And often that's linked to our ethical behavior. So the confession of faults section in the puja allows us to just put it down, to say, look, this is what's happened, that's not what I want to be doing. And you can just put it down and let it be. And then you can rejoice in merits, which is another section. So you can get that uplift of the heart. And the next stage is, and this is where it's all getting culminating in the sevenfold puja, this is where it's all coming to sort of crescendo, is when you ask for the teaching. And we'll then have a Heart Sutra. So if you know the Heart Sutra and you wish to recite it, we'll do that in unison. If you might just want to hear it and let it wash over you, the teaching, so you can choose what will work for you. And we conclude with transference of merit. So there is something, we're not just doing things for ourselves, it's having that effect on others. And when we practice, when we gain merit, we've got that confidence, actually you can just give it out because there is plenty. So there is that whole attitude of plenitude. And when we're doing this sevenfold puja, feel free to make offerings in your house. And obviously it depends where you are in your house, what circumstances you have, whether you've got the setup for it. So you might be able to do that physically, do offerings at any point that you want, that you feel inclined to. And it might be that the setup is not like that for that. So in that case, just use your imagination. Just go for it. I love it when you can offer oceans, you can offer mountains. There's no limit to this. So just go with the imagination. Yeah, we'll have a reading after the section of salutation, and I thought it was really great reading in the morning when we heard the Paranirvana Sutta, that particular reading, because I thought it was all about resolve there, and resolve and going through something. So we'll hear that reading again from Ratnadeva, and after worship we'll chant the Shakyamuni mantra. So in your own time, maybe finding that posture that served you a few minutes ago in meditation. Just arriving. Taking time to prepare for our sevenfold puja. Sevenfold puja. Pastly worship. With Mandarava, blue lotus and jasmine.
With Mandarava, blue lotus and jasmine.
With all flowers, pleasing and fragrant.
With all flowers pleasing and fragrant.
And with garlands skillfully woven.
With garlands skillfully woven.
I pay honor to the princes of the sages.
I pay honor to the princes of the sages.
So worthy veneration.
So worthy of veneration.
I envelop them in clouds of incense.
I envelop them in clouds of incense.
Sweet and penetrating.
Sweet and penetrating.
I make them offerings of food, hard and soft.
I make them offerings of food, hard and soft.
And pleasing kinds of liquids to drink.
And pleasing kinds of liquids to drink.
I offer them lamps encrusted with jewels.
I offer them lamps encrusted with jewels.
Festooned with golden lotus.
Festooned with golden lotus.
On the paving, sprinkled with perfume.
On the paving, sprinkled with perfume.
I scatter handfuls of beautiful flowers.
I scatter handfuls of beautiful flowers.
Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. 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 Salutation. As many atoms as there are
As many atoms as there are
in the 1,000,000,000 worlds,
in the 1,000,000,000 worlds,
so many times I make reverent salutation
so many times I make reverent salutation
to all the Buddhas of the 3 eras,
to all the Buddhas of the 3 eras,
to the Siddharma,
to the Siddharma,
and to the excellent community.
and to the excellent community.
I pay homage to all the shrines
I pay homage to all the shrines
and places in which the Bodhisattvas have been.
and places in which the Bodhisattvas have been.
I make profound obeisance to the teachers
I make profound obeisance to the teachers
and those to whom respectful salutation is due.
and those to whom respectful salutation is due. A reading from the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, Teachings Before Departure. Now I am frail, Ananda, old, aged, far gone in years. This is my 80th year, and my life is spent. Even as an old cart, Ananda, is held together with much difficulty, so the body of the Tathagata is kept going only with supports. It is, Ananda, only when the Tathagata, disregarding external objects, with the cessation of certain feelings, attains to and abides in the signless concentration of mind, that his body is more comfortable. Therefore, Ananda, be islands unto yourselves, refuges unto yourselves, seeking no external refuge, with the Dhamma as your island, the Dhamma as your refuge, seeking no other refuge. And how, Ananda, is a monk an island unto himself, a refuge unto himself, seeking no external refuge, with the Dhamma as his island, the Dhamma as his refuge, seeking no other refuge? When he dwells contemplating the body in the body, earnestly, clearly, comprehending, and mindfully, after having overcome desire and sorrow in regard to the world, when he dwells contemplating feelings in feelings, the mind in the mind, and mental objects in mental objects, earnestly, clearly comprehending and mindfully, after having overcome desire and sorrow in regard to the world, then truly he is an island unto himself, a refuge unto himself, seeking no external refuge, having the Dhamma as his island, the Dhamma as his refuge, seeking no other refuge. Those monks of mine, Ananda, who now or after I am gone, abide as an island unto themselves, as a refuge unto themselves, seeking no other refuge, having the Dhamma as their island and refuge, seeking no other refuge. It is they who will attain the goal, if they have the desire to learn.
Going for refuge. This very day,
This very day,
I go for my refuge.
I go for my refuge,
To the powerful protectors,
to the powerful protectors,
whose purpose is to guard the universe,
whose purpose is to guard the universe,
the mighty conquerors who overcome suffering everywhere.
the mighty conquerors who overcome suffering everywhere.
Wholeheartedly also I take my refuge.
Wholeheartedly also I take my refuge.
In the Dharma they have ascertained,
In the Dhamma they have ascertained,
which is the abode of security against the rounds of rebirth.
which is the abode of security against the rounds of rebirth.
Likewise, in the host of bodhisattvas,
Likewise, in the host of bodhisattvas,
I take my refuge.
I take my refuge.
Namo tassa.
Namo tassa.
Bhagavato arahato.
Bhagavato arahato.
Samma sambuddhassa.
Samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa.
Namo tassa.
Bhagavato arahato.
Bhagavato arahato.
Samma sambuddhassa.
Samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa.
Namo tassa.
Bhagavato arahato.
Bhagavato arahato.
Samma sambuddhassa.
Samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatyampi dham buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Panatipata.
Panatipata.
Veramani.
Verimini.
Sikkhapadang.
Sikkhapadang.
Samadhiyami.
Samadhiyami.
Adinadana.
Adinadana.
Veramani.
Verimini.
Sikkhapadang.
Sikkhapadang.
Samadhiyami.
Samadhiyami.
Kamesu.
Amesu.
Michachara.
Michachara.
Veramani.
Verimini.
Sikkhapadang.
Sikkhapadang.
Samadhiyami.
Samadhiyami.
Musavada.
Savada.
Veramani.
Verimini.
Sikkhapadang.
Sikkhapadang.
Samadhiyami.
Samadhiyami.
Suramerya.
Siramarya.
Maja.
Majja.
Pamadatana.
Amadatana.
Veramani.
Verimini.
Sikkhapadang.
Sikkhapadang.
Samadhiyami.
Samadhiyami.
Sadhu.
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 With deeds of loving kindness,
With deeds of loving kindness,
I purify my body.
I purify my body.
With open-handed generosity,
With open-handed generosity,
I purify my body.
I purify my body.
With stillness, simplicity, and contentment,
With stillness, simplicity, and contentment,
I purify my body.
I purify my body.
With truthful communication,
With truthful communication,
I purify my speech.
I purify my speech.
with mindfulness clear and radiant.
With mindfulness clear and radiant,
I purify my mind.
I purify my mind.
Compassion of faults. The evil that I have heaped up
The evil that I have heaped up
through my ignorance and foolishness.
through my ignorance and foolishness.
Evil in the world of everyday experience,
Evil in the world of everyday experience,
as well as evil in understanding and intelligence.
as well as evil in understanding and intelligence.
All that I acknowledge to the protectors,
All that I acknowledge to the protectors,
standing before them
standing before them,
with hands raised in reverence
with hands raised in reverence,
and terrified of suffering.
and terrified of suffering.
I pay salutations again and again.
I pay salutations again and again.
May the leaders receive this kindly,
May the leaders receive this kindly,
just as it is, with its many faults.
just as it is with its many faults.
What is not good, O protectors,
What is not good, O protectors,
I shall not do again.
I shall not do again.
Rejoicing in merit. I rejoice with delight
I rejoice with delight
in the good done by all beings,
in the good done by all beings,
through which they obtain rest,
through which they obtain rest,
with the end of suffering.
with the end of suffering.
May those who have suffered be happy.
May those who have suffered be happy.
I rejoice in the release of beings
I rejoice in the release of beings
from the sufferings of the rounds of existence.
from the sufferings of the rounds of existence.
I rejoice in the nature of the Bodhisattva
I rejoice in the nature of the Bodhisattva
and the Buddha,
and the Buddha,
who are protectors.
who are protectors.
I rejoice in the arising of the will to enlightenment
I rejoice in the arising of the will to enlightenment
and the teaching,
and the teaching,
those oceans that bring happiness to all beings
those oceans that bring happiness to all beings,
and are the abode of welfare of all beings.
and are the abode of welfare of all beings.
Entreaty and supplication. Saluting them with folded hands.
Saluting them with folded hands.
I entreat the Buddhas in all the quarters.
I entreat the Buddhas in all the quarters.
May they make shine the lamp of the Dharma
May they make shine the lamp of the Dharma
for those wandering in the suffering of delusion,
for those wandering in the suffering of delusion.
with hands folded in reverence.
With hands folded in reverence,
I implore the conquerors desiring to enter Nirvana
I implore the conquerors desiring to enter Nirvana
May they remain here for endless ages,
May they remain here for endless ages,
so that life in this world does not grow dark.
so that life in this world does not grow dark.
The Heart Sutra. The Bodhisattva of compassion, when he meditated deeply, saw the emptiness of all five skandhas and sundered the bonds that caused him suffering. Here then, form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness no other than form. Form is only emptiness. Emptiness only form. Feeling, thought and choice, consciousness itself are the same as this. All things are by nature void. They are not born or destroyed, nor are they stained or pure, nor do they wax or wane. So, in emptiness, no form, no feeling, thought or choice, nor is there consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no colour, sound, smell, taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of, not even act of sensing, no ignorance or end of it, nor all that comes of ignorance, no withering, no death, no end of them. Nor is there pain or cause of pain, or cease in pain, or noble path to lead from pain, not even wisdom to obtain. Attainment too is emptiness. So know that the Bodhisattva, holding to nothing whatever, but dwelling in prajna wisdom, is freed of delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. All Buddhas of past and present, Buddhas of future time, using this prajna wisdom, come to full and perfect vision. Hear then the great Dharani, the radiant peerless mantra, the prajna paramita, whose words allay all pain. Hear and believe its truth. Gate gate paragate, parasangate bodhiswaha. Gate gate paragate, parasangate bodhiswaha. Gate gate paragate, parasangate bodhiswaha. Transference of merit and self-surrender. May the merit gained
May the merit gained
in my acting thus
in my acting thus
go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings.
go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings.
My personality throughout my existences,
My personality throughout my existences,
my possessions,
my possessions,
and my merit in all three ways.
and my merit in all three ways.
I give up without regard to myself,
I give up without regard to myself,
for the benefit of all beings.
for the benefit of all beings.
just as the earth and other elements
just as the earth and other elements
are serviceable in many ways
are serviceable in many ways
to the infinite number of beings
to the infinite number of beings
inhabiting limitless space.
inhabiting limitless space.
So may I become
So may I become
that which maintains all beings,
that which maintains all beings,
situated through that space,
situated throughout space,
so long as all have not attained
so long as all have not attained
to peace.
to peace.
Om Mani Padme Hum.
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 Om Marapajanati.
Om Marabhajanadi.
Om Marapajanadi.
Om Marabhajanadi.
Om Marapajanadi.
Om Marabhajanadi.
Om Vajrapani Hong.
Om Vajrapani Hum.
Om Vajrapani Hong.
Om Vajrapani Hum.
Om Vajrapani Hong.
Om Vajrapani Hum.
Om Tare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Ture Swaha.
Om Tare Tutare Ture Swaha.
Om Amideva Hri.
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 Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha.
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 Om Mani Mani Maha Mani Shakyamuni Swaha.
Om Mahong Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hong.
Om Mahom Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hong.
Om Mahong Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hong.
Om Mahom Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hong.
Om Mahong Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hong.
Om Mahom Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hong.
Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhiswaha.
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 Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
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 That brings our morning session to an end. And we've evoked all these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So that will stay with you for the next 4 hours, until 3.5 hours, until we meet again at 4, as well as each other. We'll hold each other in our hearts and minds in the afternoon. And just be wise about how you're spending the time in between. We call them bardos, but even the times in between can be the times of becoming. So let's meet again at 4 o'clock.